Hello and welcome to the Recruit Rockstars podcast for VCs and PE companies only. I am Jeff, I am your host, and I am thrilled to be joined today by another guest to focus on the people part of your company. You know, I've always found in starting companies, I've started a bunch of companies, but also working with other entrepreneurs. If you get the first few hires right, you are in really good shape. You've got a huge leg up. And if you get the first few hires wrong, well, I don't know what to tell you. And so I wanted to find a guest who has a very specific experience in this realm, kind of the first 10, 20 hires, both technical and non-technical. And I found one. And his bio reads like a who's who. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's in Silicon Valley, worked as a recruiter at Google. You've heard of Google. He worked at Amazon. You've heard of Amazon. Worked a bunch of other places, including, by the way, App Dynamics. And then was named Director of Talent at Unusual Ventures. Now, Unusual Ventures is a VC fund, and he's going to tell us a bit about that. And Jon Volk helps all their portfolio companies recruit those first few hires right. So in the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how to do it, how not to screw it up, and what Jon has learned along the way. So Jon, with all that set up, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I am thrilled to have you. I've been looking forward to it because, I think there's a lot of myths, right? A lot of misconceptions about VC and specifically how to get those first few hires right. So why don't we start at just kind of the 50,000 foot level? How many portfolio companies do you have at Unusual Ventures, and what would a typical size and stage be?
Yeah, so at Unusual, I think we're in a little over 40 companies, various ownership stakes, et cetera. But we really primarily focus on the seed stage. So, we're investing in on the idea.
Got it.
And then once that happens, if they choose to, opt into my my services, I get in there and help them build out the company. So
could it literally be two guys or two gals in a garage?
Yeah.
It could be that small.
I had a meeting with two guys in our conference room who are looking to get going here. So
got it. And
on the earliest.
On the large size, how big might one of your portfolio companies be?
It's still less than 10. I mean,
okay.
we really focus on that where I would get involved.
Yeah. So these are early stage growth companies.
Correct.
Got it. So you've seen this movie many, many times. Why don't we start with one of the biggest misconceptions or myths or mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make when it comes to making a hire, of that first employee. So maybe it's employee number 3 after the founders, or maybe it's employee number 5. Where do they screw up the most?
That's a really good question. I really focus with them on teaching them that the employee is not working for your company, right? It's not, the company doesn't exist yet. I mean, it does on paper, and yes, you have an investment, but they're going to work for you as a person. And so you need to be able to sell that vision and earn the trust of that employee, because they're leaving probably a larger company, a quote unquote more stable company. And so they need to be able to sell their vision and earn that trust, because the candidate or employee is going to work for you. And not
coming to work for you as a manager, as a person, and a leader.
Yeah, they're in that garage with you, right next to you.
And
they need to garner that trust. And so I really try to empower founders to learn how to sell that on a personal level.
Yep. And so, my observation, and I'd love to know yours, is that quite often early stage companies will hire friends and family, right? It's a shortcut for trust. We know each other. We've worked together before. Maybe we're married. Maybe we're friends. Maybe we are drinking buddies. Maybe I don't know how to recruit, so I'm hiring someone that they're available and I know them. Mm-hmm. Is that a good idea, a bad idea? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it is the easiest, quick, shortest route. But there's some problems with that. In it's like having a roommate that's your best friend. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. I can't really say that don't do it, because you need to get a product built, right? You've got a finite amount of time to get a product built to get to your next round of funding.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to pull the ripcord fast if it's not working out. I mean,
that means you got to be prepared to lose the friendship, right?
Yeah, or part ways. I mean, it's just if that's the way it's going to be. But there's other pitfalls, right? If you only hire people from your network or from your close-knit community, there's a lack of diversity of thought. It could hinder the product. So it's a tightrope to walk. I will never say not do it, but just recognize when it's not going well quickly.
Got it. How long do you give it before you say, you know what, I have made a mistake?
Ooh, that's another good question. You got to start seeing warning signs within like 6 months. I mean, you don't have a lot of time. You're looking to raise the next round maybe in 18 months.
Yeah.
Depending on various factors. So, I mean, you got to identify that quickly.
Got it. Could be a different work style, different DNA, or maybe the competencies just aren't what you thought they were.
Yeah. So sometimes you just don't work well with someone.
Got it.
And that's just the fact.
When it comes to an early stage company, this sub 10 employees that you described, how do you weight, or how should the founder weight competencies, skills, ability to do the job, right? He knows Java, she knows Ruby, whatever it is, versus a DNA fit, right? More the cultural fit, the shared vision, et cetera. Fit with the company versus fit with the job. How do you think about that? What should the ratio be? To walk us through kind of how you make those decisions, because there's always a trade-off because no candidate's perfect.
Right. Right. At the seed stage, I think a lot of times you need to be willing to be adaptable as the founder. You need to be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, these are what I'm strong at, and I need to be able to counterbalance that. So it's really more on the founder. So that's really, they need to be adaptable and can't be rigid. It's just the way of building the company. So once you find someone who's got the skills, I really encourage them to, say they've interviewed the 2 people in your company, go out to a lunch, like get away from the office, go do something that is not work related, and see if you get.
That's more for the DNA check, right?
Exactly. So we've got one company in San Francisco that was what they would do, and they grew in 6 months from 4 to 15. Maybe it was a little longer than that. But it was technical. All right, the whole team's going out to lunch and see if there's a fit.
Right.
And then we've got another company up in the Seattle area that it's the founder takes them out to a happy hour or lunch after every interview to find out, hey, can I just have a conversation with this person?
Right.
Because you're in that garage, you're in that one room office.
So he or she doesn't even interview them about the role and the skills. It's more of a general, not so much do I like you, but what is he looking for, or she?
It's not necessarily, do I like you, but it's can we coexist in this small space? So he totally trusts his team to technically vet the people out, and then their thumbs up, good to go. All right, let's go have a beer.
Got it.
And just talk about, see if we can make this work.
Got it. Understood. When you think about where most people have gone wrong, is it more on competencies and skills, or is it more on that culture fit and DNA, et cetera? The soft stuff.
Honestly, neither one of those.
Where do most people go wrong?
Compensation.
Really? So walk us through that.
Yeah. So a lot of times, they'll vet them out. Technically, this person's good. Yep. Great guy, great, woman, man, whatever. But I want to pay them $150 because all of our starting team started at $150.
Yep.
Like, well, that person has a life. They've got a family. They might not be able to take that big cut back. And so we had a company that just, that was the kind of the obstacle. The whole founding member was at one compensation piece, and they delayed a hire for like 6 months. And that sets productivity back. So here in Silicon Valley, you have to pay for the talent. Right. I don't care what stage you're at.
And how do you benchmark? How do you know if you're at market, under market, over market?
That's where I kind of come in.
Yeah. Because you see a lot of individuals, you can give a sense of what a range should be.
Yeah. So a lot of what I do is compensation consulting, where, founders will call me 8:00, 9:00 at night and saying, hey, I want to make an offer to this candidate. Is this within range? Yeah. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think there's a lot of, you can read any sort of article that says, oh, software engineers are making $225,000 a year. It's like some. Yeah.
Some, not all. And so, John, where do you get your information for a position that you've never done before? You don't know. I'm sure a lot of positions like the back of your hand, but let's say it's something kind of unusual. You haven't really dealt with it. You need to make a decision the next 48 hours. How do you get some data points?
So there's different, obviously you've got the standard surveys out there, right? You've got, the Radford, and all of those, I have those as data points, and just based on my career. And I've been lucky enough to not only do tech, but G&A, sales, you name it. So I've got all those baselines. Yep. And then in California it gets tricky because you can't ask, what do you make?
Sure.
So a lot of times I'll ask the candidate a question right up front. I'll cover compensation at the very first conversation.
And how do you do that in a state where you're not allowed to ask what they make? There must be a different way you ask.
Yeah, I ask, what will it take to get you to make a move?
Oh, so what do you expect to make?
Yes, exactly.
That you can ask, just to be very clear.
Very clear, yeah. And I think New York's the other state where you cannot ask what they're currently making.
Yep.
And then let them give me a number, and then we kind of go from there.
And do you find most candidates will answer that question?
Most will, and because I simply explain to them, look, our companies are seed stage. We don't have the budgeting time. We simply don't have it. And if you don't want to give me that, I totally understand. So I might do a little leeway. Say, hey, let's see if get you with the founder, see if you guys are both interested. And if there is, I need to know. We need to start compensation right away because I don't want to waste their time either. And I'm very upfront with that. Like I'm not here to really negotiate. I don't work on commission.
Yeah. And I find candidates don't want to waste their time either.
Exactly. They've probably got 3 or 4 interviews and 500 emails in their inbox. So it's it's just very transparent.
And how do you think about, John, the trade-off between cash and equity? So let's say you're talking to a candidate. Mm-hmm. You ask that your magic question, what do you expect to make, or what's it going to take to make you move? And they're at, $50,000 or $30,000 more than what you can afford, what you've budgeted. Have you found that equity can close that gap, or do you really need to be able to nail the cash, and then equity is just kind of a lottery ticket on top of that?
Yeah, so I think that's important to where in all recruiting, and I think that founders need to understand that there's a personal side to it. You're dealing with a person, not a product, right? And so when you talk to them in that first conversation, I find out what's more important. Are you taking care of 2 families? Do you have kids, et cetera?
Right.
And so I find out, hey, what's more important to you? Is it that cash comp? Is it that equity comp? And then what we've done that's been really, really successful is we have said, look, we create 3 tiers, maybe I'll just, as an example, 200K base, 175K base, 150K base with different equity stacked to it. Which one is more attractive to you?
And do you let them pick literally, or are you just trying to feel them out on their risk profile?
Feel them out a bit. But then if they nail it, hey, I would do the 175 and 0.8%. That sounds good to me. Okay, this is what we're closed at. Let's move forward.
Got it.
So we have them close on that first conversation.
That's a fascinating idea, John. So what you're saying is you kind of give them a seesaw and you say, look, there's 2, 3, 4 choices. We're agnostic as to which one you pick. We know you've got mouths to feed at home. Or if you're young, single, rent, no overhead, you might want more equity. And then you leave it to them. Pick your own compensation package.
Yeah, and as the base salary goes up, we're going to take some equity down and vice versa. If you're willing to come in at 130, we'll give you much more stake in the company.
Inevitably, a candidate's going to say, well, I want both. And they look at the table of 3 choices and they say, I'll take one from Chinese menu A and one from Chinese menu B. How do you get around that? Or do you say, no, it doesn't work that way?
Sometimes you got to walk away.
Yeah.
And there's no point, because again, if they're that, they're going to haggle you the whole time. And the compensation, back to the point about DNA, culture fit, how someone handles that compensation conversation with you, I'm evaluating them for a culture fit. Are they honest?
Yeah.
Are they trying to
are they transparent?
Yep. Are they transparent? If someone is very transparent with me, I already on compensation for their family, that's a culture fit.
Yep.
Right. So I'm using this to evaluate them on a few levels.
Yep.
And then I relay that to the founders.
Got it. When will you walk away, other than them not handling that conversation well? What other things have you learned are early warning signs that no matter how great this candidate looks on paper, no matter how many years they spent at Google, no matter how amazing their education is, you got to walk away? What do you find are some of those key things that people ignore?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very important for companies to set up a recruiting process. This is the way our company is going to interview candidates. And if a candidate is not willing to buy into that process, timelines, number of interviews, et cetera, that's a red flag. They're not willing to dive in with you. And so I think that's one.
That's easy. That's easy to say, but in the market like this where everyone is working, you're at full employment, and everyone has 5 offers, or not everyone, but a lot of people in Silicon Valley. Are you saying that really you show no flex and you say, look, this is our process. You take them through the process and you say there's no exceptions. If you're not engaged in this process, then the onus is on me to get you engaged and get you excited enough that you want to invest the time in that process. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because when I'm talking to up front, I just say, hey, let me walk you through how this is going to go. And I'm very transparent with them. I said, and as a seed stage, we move faster than the larger companies.
Sure.
Right. And so that's actually more appealing to candidates like, oh, wait, I'm not going to have to wait 3 months for a hiring committee to get back to me.
Yeah.
No, we're going to do 1 phone interview or 2 phone interviews and an on-site, and you'll have a decision within 48 hours. And if they say, well, I wanted to wait, and then it's just, I respect that. And there is flexibility. Don't get me wrong. There is, but we will continue to move on with other candidates. So I just very much explain to the candidate, hey, look, that's your choice, but you run a risk of losing this offer. And I think founders sometimes panic and they don't look at it as oh my God, we're losing a candidate. They need to understand they've got a great opportunity. They're holding something too. And that's that job. That could be the next great thing.
Yep.
And so as long as they kind of operate with transparency and from that position, more often than not, you'll get candidates leaning in because everything's on the table. You're not hiding anything.
You're being totally transparent, which is such an important thing in this process, isn't it? And a lot of companies try to only show the best stuff, only talk about the good stuff, and candidates find out the day after they take the job and they feel like they've been bamboozled.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And, back at App Dynamics, as a recruiting team, we would make sure after we would make a hire, we would have our recruiters check in after the first day, check in after the first week, check in after the first month, check in after the first 6 months. Transparency, finding out from the candidate, hey, is this still going the way we thought it was going to go? And if not, we can course correct with the managers, and your retention rates, go way, are just much better.
You're looking for early warning signs.
100%.
2% of Americans don't show up for their second day of work. 2%. It's amazing to me. I mean, you can really screw things up early.
Yeah. I bet people might show up on their first day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Before we wrap up, what about risk? So you're dealing with sub 10 or 20 employee companies. No matter what candidate you're talking to, they must be going through their head, there's a good amount of risk here. Mm-hmm. How do you educate a candidate so that they can make their own assessment, not bamboozle them, but educate them so that they can make a realistic assessment of the risk they'd be taking to join this company?
I'm lucky to work for a firm that has got two founders that are very, very successful, in John Veronis and Jyoti Bansal. And so I'll be honest, I leverage that a lot. I say, hey, look at the track record here. Okay, these are two people who we don't invest in, they have a track record of knowing what works.
Yeah.
And so every startup is a risk. That is just the nature of the beast. And I explain that to them. And so, again, I hate to just say the same thing over, but I'm very transparent on the figures, and it is what it is. But I really lean on Unusual's track record and the track record of our leaders. And so that resonates a lot, I think, with people. But then also I tell them, like, look, we're in 40 companies now. Okay. If it doesn't work out here, I have a network of 40 other companies that are looking for people to look for. So you're in this network that is constantly looking to grow.
That's the benefit of joining a family, if you will, of portfolio companies, is you can say, look, if this one doesn't make it, there might be other opportunities, but you also have to be delicate that you're not promising anything.
Correct. Right. And but I think, again, Silicon Valley has been through this, that I think the candidates know, and especially candidates who kind of like that startup, they know the inherent risk, and they've probably been through it before more often than not. It's the more junior engineers that you have to educate a little bit more, but you'll notice a DNA in candidates that, hey, I was successful at this startup, I want to go try it again. Yep. And so the risk is known.
This job market is crazy. We're at a record or 50-year low unemployment rate. Without naming names, what's kind of the craziest thing that you can think of that stands out over the past year or two in terms of what a company has done to land a hot or highly desired candidate?
I don't think it's the 6-figure sign-on bonuses are nuts.
6-figure sign-on bonuses.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Or just so I'm clear, are early stage companies doing that, or those are larger companies?
No, but the problem is, and this is another thing founders understand, size doesn't matter. You're competing with those companies for the same people. Right. The talent market's the same.
Right.
So yeah, I lost an engineer to a very large company, $150K sign-on bonus. Day they signed. I was just like, wow.
And that's in addition to a strong comp package, I would assume.
Oh yeah.
So,
and then equity on top of it.
What are the terms of something like that, of $150,000 signing bonus? You literally come, and if you stay 1 week, you get to keep the money. There's got to be some catch.
A year. Typically, it's a year.
A year repayable?
Yeah. So if you leave after a year, or leave before a year, you got to pay it back. And then, but one of that size, they probably do 2 years.
So let's assume it's 2 years. If we terminate you for performance, or just because we don't like your socks, on the first month, you get to keep that money.
There would be a clawback. There's no way the legal would allow that.
Got it. So there's a clawback if you resign or if we part ways with you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Another one, there's a couple large company up in Seattle, someone signed to an offer sheet. Director found out about it, flew him up to Seattle, had him have dinner with the senior VP of the company.
Wow.
Came back and said, I can't leave. And so
wow.
I don't know what the compensation package was there, but I could take a few guesses.
Wow. So I think that the moral of the story is you can't pay top of market. There's always someone that has deeper pockets that can pay more than you.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to compete for talent just on dollars, not only are you going to waste a whole lot of time and fail, but you also have to wonder, are you getting the right people? Are they coming for the mission and the vision and the excitement and the journey? Or are they just interested in the almighty dollar? Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But that may be the wrong candidate for you.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's why when I work with my founders, I really coach them on selling your vision, why this is going to be great, why show that passion. We just had a candidate walk out of an interview this past week with a company here in Oakland. The candidates, I said, hey, how'd it go? I have never met 8 people more passionate about what they're trying to do in my life.
Wow.
And I was like, this company gets it. They're going to have no problem hiring.
That's great.
And that is really your kind of what you can do to fight back.
Because that's all you can do to fight back.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, people are still good people. And I really believe that. And they really want to work for passionate people. And so if you can tap into that, you will not have a problem with the culture, building a culture.
Jon, great advice. Thank you so much for making the time. Jon, how can people learn more about Unusual Ventures or get in touch?
Yeah, find us on LinkedIn and Twitter, Unusual VC. And then you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, Jon Volk. And then on Twitter, it's Jon V19, JONV19.
Great. Thank you so much for making the time today.
All right. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.